Now to the decision yesterday from the Supreme Court striking down a Louisiana law that would have severely restricted access to abortion in the state. It was the first abortion case decided with President Trump appointees on the court. Chief Justice John Roberts sided with the liberal members in the 5-4 decision. Although the Chief Justice had previously voted to uphold a similar Texas law back in 2016, yesterday he said that respect for precedent meant that he was compelled to side with the court's 4-member liberal wing. Joining us now, member of the House Judiciary Committee, Democratic Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal of Washington. She's the author of the new book entitled Use the Power You Have, A Brown Woman's Guide to Politics and Political Change. We'll get to that in a moment. Congratulations on the book. But first, your reaction to the Supreme Court's decision yesterday.
Well, it was an incredibly important decision, Mika, because it does, of course, strike down this absolutely unfair Louisiana law that would have put barriers in place for so many women across the state, but across the country. It would have led to a barrage of similar kinds of laws. Now, the thing about it, though, is Congress has to act because the ruling was fairly narrow in the sense that Chief Justice Roberts, I think, felt bound to go by precedent as the Chief Justice, but he actually said he thought the Texas law was not correctly decided. And I think it still opens up the possibility for any number of challenges to a woman's constitutionally protected right to make choices about her own body. So we in Congress need to make sure that we are continuing to congressionally authorize that right and just ensure that we're not going to have a Supreme Court that takes away those rights or puts undue burdens in place for women to not be able to make those choices.
And obviously that was a huge step, especially for Louisiana yesterday. Talk about what you're hearing from your constituents in your state in terms of women's reproductive rights and health, and where you think major policy improvements could be made.
Well, my state luckily protects the right for women to make these choices. And so we've worked very hard, and we've had government that is sympathetic to this constitutional protection. So we are one of the lucky states, but that is not true across the country. In fact, there are 5 states that only have 1 clinic that performs abortion. And if these burdens are put on those states, the reality is you're going to force women to travel across state boundaries. You're going to make abortion, once again, incredibly difficult. And so we need to repeal the Hyde Amendment. We need to ensure that we are providing funding. We need to repeal the gag rule. There are many things that we can do, and we have bills introduced to do that. We just need to make sure we actually move forward. I think that for Democrats, we have to understand that the judicial system is extremely important in terms of electoral politics. And frankly, Mika, we haven't been as good at turning out voters based on what is happening, not just at the Supreme Court, by the way, but up and down the judicial system. And I think that is one of the things that we need to make sure that we are really helping people to understand how much influence the courts have over everything from abortion to collective bargaining rights.
Congresswoman, it's Willie Geist. Good to have you on the show this morning. On a different topic, the New York Times is reporting this morning that President Trump received a written intelligence in the president's daily brief as far back as late February that Russian intelligence was carrying out attacks, leading the Taliban-linked militants to attack American and coalition soldiers fighting in Afghanistan. What is your reaction to that news? And if that intelligence is in fact true, what should America be doing about that?
It is unconscionable that, first of all, this is the first we're hearing about it, that there's been no briefings. If we take the reporting to be true, and there's no reason to believe it's not at this point, the reality is this is a president who is not in any way protecting our troops. He says he's for national security, but he clearly isn't. He is allowing people to die in the field because he's not paying attention to this intelligence. He's not willing to call out Russia. Congress has time and time again, on the Democratic side, but even with some Republicans from time to time, passed various pieces of legislation saying that the president needs to take on Russia. Russia and Putin are not friendly allies in many of these circumstances, and the president has been unwilling. And so it leads to the question of what is the president hiding about his relationship with Putin and Putin's influence over him, that he would allow American troops to die in the field. That is just unconscionable. And we have called for a full briefing. Speaker Pelosi has and Leader Schumer have called for a full briefing of both the House and the Senate so that we can really understand. Obviously, there's meetings going on at the White House right now about this topic. But I think that Americans have to understand this is not a president who puts the national interest of the United States and our military first. And that is absolutely outrageous.
Katty Kay has the next question. Katty?
Yeah, Congresswoman, I wanted to ask you about your book and the experience of running for office as a woman of color in the United States. We know that it's harder for women to run in political parties here anyway, which is why there are fewer women in Congress than we would all like. How much harder is it to run as a woman of color in American politics?
It's just a lot harder because on every level, you're not necessarily seen as part of the Democratic establishment. There really haven't been until fairly recently attempts to reach out to communities of color and develop a leadership pipeline there. And so what happens is, a lot of women of color look at politics and say, it's not for me. I'm not going to be accepted there, or I don't have a future there, or I can't go there. And so for me, I think just being able to say to people, you can see a different future for yourself because I'm here as the first South Asian American woman in the House, one of only 14 immigrants, naturalized citizens to serve in the United States Congress. That's very important. But also all of the things that go along with needing to run for office, including money. Fundraising is much, much harder because, of course, you need to be connected to wealthy people. Some of that has changed as we've gone to small dollar donations, but there's a host of barriers in the way for women of color to run and to win. And so I think we're seeing a change to that, and hopefully we'll see much more of that.
The new book is Use the Power You Have, A Brown Woman's Guide to Politics and Political Change. Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, thank you very much for coming on the show this morning.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.